This week, here on our free preview on YouTube, join us as we take a look into the commercial real estate market and delinquency rates. For now, sit back, relax, and join us as we take you through the numbers. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lindsay.
How are you?
I'm pretty well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you. So we sit here pre-recording due to the Monday holiday on the horizon.
Yes. First, want to acknowledge Happy Veterans Day to everyone. We hope you can celebrate with your veterans in whatever way that looks like to you.
Yep. From my stint as a Marine Corps wife, I know that this is the holiday that you can say Happy Veterans Day. This is a moment to thank those who have served for our country and thank all of you who have done just that, and really celebrate and still remember those who've made the ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And their families as well.
And families especially, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that a lot of folks are off on Monday, spending the day with their veteran, and so we decided that we would record early.
Right, which puts us really in the middle of a very busy week. A lot going on. We do want to first acknowledge that we have not yet, as of filming, gotten the Fed decision for their November meeting. So we don't know what will happen. We have some guesses. The market has some guesses. It seems like the market is overwhelmingly expecting a 25 basis point rate cut.
Okay.
We'll see. I got burned in September, so I'm not making any more predictions.
That's right. That's right. You had said 25 and they came 50. In at 50.
Yep. I'll live up to it.
What's your bet this time around?
So if I say 25 again, I'm going to look like I'm just not learning my lesson. But I think that's more likely. They've been signaling very clearly that was not the only cut they'll make. They'll make more. Again, at the outside, we could get 50. At the kind of downside, maybe they hold and wait until December to make cuts. Again, the market, I think it's north of 95% odds on just 25. So that seems to be the base case. I won't lose sleep either way if they go between 0 and 50. Really what we're watching for is the overall magnitude of cuts this cycle, how long they keep cutting, how far that rate drops down. So as long as we're still on that general trajectory, I don't think we need to split hairs.
And as a reminder, they shifted this meeting because of the election, right?
They usually meet Tuesday, Wednesday. This week we're meeting Wednesday. I say it as if I'm involved, but Wednesday, Thursday. So waited out the election, which is the other...
I was going to say, did that other big thing that happened this week, is that going to weigh at all on the Fed's decision? I know it's not supposed to, but say there is not a rate cut.
Sure.
And would that be, in your opinion, a political move, or would it
certainly could be viewed that way, which is why I think they want to stick to what the market is expecting. They don't want to surprise to the upside or the downside, because that could look, right, like you're favoring one party or another, one person, trying to give them a little boost or hold them down. So again, I think there's a lot of conjecture. There's a lot of speculation that always happens. We are not in that room. We'll get the minutes eventually, but we don't know what they're discussing. They're looking at so many different things. Last week, we talked about that really bad jobs number. I mean, the question is, would that be enough to make them cut 50? Again, I don't think so, because they're economists. They know what influenced those numbers, 2 hurricanes and some very significant strikes. They know just how much that weighed on things. On the other side, we also last week got relatively strong GDP numbers. So could that be enough to cause them not to cut it all? Again, I don't think so. This is part of a general ongoing trend. No big surprises. So even with the election result, the Fed is not a political body. They are apolitical. They're looking through these election cycles. What really matters is what they're watching for their dual mandate. Inflation on the one hand, jobs on the other. We want to see just a steady hand at the wheel.
So the headline here is Office CMBS delinquency rate spikes to 9.4%, highest since worst months after the financial crisis. So in summary, commercial mortgage-backed securities delinquency rates spiked to an average of 6% across all building types. The sector is struggling so badly that they have coined the phrase survive till 25.
Oh my goodness.
So like I said, the 6% average across all of the building types, but the headline itself is referring to this rate spike, the delinquency rate spike to 9.4%. So where are the delinquencies the highest within the commercial real estate market?
Yeah, that is offices. For no surprise to anyone, right? Post-COVID, we just don't need offices in quite the same way. So overall delinquencies, it was just a hair shy of 6%. It was 5.98%. That rose from 4.63% a year ago. So that is a pretty hefty rise.
Yes.
The office category specifically, a year ago that had been at 5.75% and today rose to 9.37%. So a big spike in offices.
Yeah.
We did see rise in other categories. Industrial buildings, those were actually down slightly. Some were more muted. So retail, for example, it rose from 6.55% to 6.82%, which again, splitting hairs. But multifamily, so like apartment condo buildings, those rose from 2.64% to 3.24%, which those are lower numbers overall. So directionally there was rise, but we still see rising rents. We still see pretty low vacancy rates. So that is still on the healthier end of things compared to, say, lodging went from 4.76% up to 6.09%.
Oh, wow.
So a little bit, again, both retail and lodging are in that 6% range, office in the 9% range. We do see some categories just not performing quite so well.
Yeah, sounds like it. So, but these mortgages, the commercial mortgage-backed securities.
Yes.
So these work differently than, say, we were just talking about like your single-family home mortgage, right?
They do.
And what, I guess, constitutes a delinquency in this scenario? Because I was interested to read the different ways that they were breaking down throughout the article.
This got very technical, didn't it? So we actually, so what we're doing, a mortgage is delinquent if the borrower doesn't make their interest payments. I think there's a 30-day grace period, so it's 30 days delinquent. There are other categories, other classifications. You can see how many are 60-day delinquent, 90-day delinquent, for example. But this commercial mortgage-backed security, it's actually a subset of overall commercial real estate.
Okay.
And in fact, commercial mortgage-backed securities, those are securitized loans, we call them. If we look at overall commercial real estate loan delinquencies, that, according to the Federal Reserve Board in June, was just 1.4%. So it paints a very different picture from 6% to just 1.5%.
Right.
The difference here is CMBS, those are typically longer term fixed financing. Okay. Whereas if you look at a CRE, they call them CLOs, collateralized loan obligations, those are shorter term kind of transactional financing. Okay. So I feel like this headline, right, it picked on the subcategory of commercial real estate. CMBS only make up 11.7% of all commercial real estate loans. Okay. This is a minority of loans that are happening. But you're right. We found the problem, right? The stress point, and especially when you go into that office subcategory, office properties made up 60% of all new delinquencies.
Wow. So, like you said, kind of no surprise there. But what about from a lender's perspective? I mean, this has to be quite the headache to be dealing with. And is there how do they manage? Is there such thing as cutting your losses? Like, what's happening from the lender's perspective?
No, there really are. CMBS specifically, these are known for being packaged and resold, and you sell kind of the different levels of losses. So first loss up to this point, we package that and sell it to one person. Next kind of tranche of loan delinquencies. So you can take on greater or lesser risks even within the category. That's why these securitized loans exist, is to kind of that repackaging and selling. Now, the reason, again, that they're calling back to the Great Recession is a lot of these kind of package and sell the loans that brought up trouble in 2008, because what was happening then is these repackaged loans, right? We divided out into first losses, second loss, and so on. Yeah. Those were then being repackaged. And so you could actually have a different product than you understood. If you take the riskiest bucket, package it with other risky buckets, and sell the safest bucket of those risky, you're still not safe, right? You're coming from that risky position. So there are a lot of technical ways to slice and dice and repackage and resell, and there's a whole industry around it. But again, like we said with the residential side, we did learn lessons in 2008. It's easy to say we fall into old habits,
Right.
but a lot of how this industry exists is now a little bit more transparent. You know what you're getting. You're not just seeing the surface level anymore. So we hope that folks learned, right? They know the risk does exist there in a way that hadn't been proven before that cycle.
Yeah. So CRE fund managers have spread this rumor that office CRE has bottomed out, but the CMBS delinquency rate doesn't agree with the bottom out scenario as it is aggressively spiking as of October.
Right.
So kind of which is it?
Well, that number is still rising. So if we were to put it in a phase of the business cycle, it would be phase B. We haven't yet seen the peak. That said, are we close to it? You know, given what it's now almost 5 years post-pandemic, right? We're headed into the time at which a lot of these office loans turn over after a certain number of years. That term, just we're getting better hindsight, right? Getting better distance from the shock. I found a lot of kind of a wide variety of office vacancy rate estimates. Depends who you ask. I saw one that was around 14%. A lot of them hovered, though, around 20%, which felt a bit high to me, 1 in 5. But it was 19.5% according to Commercial Edge. It was 20.1% in Moody's estimate. They did clarify that this was just for top metro areas. So maybe, again, cities are slightly higher than the overall national. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot of reference to like big office towers.
Exactly.
Throughout this, for sure.
That's the problem. So again, we're getting far enough away that is that office still 4 or 5 years later sitting empty? Are you repurposing it for something else? You know?
Well, I think that's the big question here. You know, so it says 3 months ago, the delinquency rate surpassed the surge in delinquencies that followed the American oil bust from 2014 to 2016. When I read that, though, I think the question here is there more of a structural issue that's happening right now? You know, oil prices, it was the big oil bust, sure, but oil prices change, you know, almost with the wind in comparison to what we're seeing this day and age with the real estate market. So is it that there's just a much more structural challenge at play with the commercial real estate market?
I think that's a very real possibility, especially because you look at these offices, we don't need as many, or we don't need offices in the same way that we did historically. And a lot of these spaces, you can do something else with them. That typically is a very expensive retrofit to make it either apartments maybe or retail spaces, right? Whatever else. It's not a cheap fix. It's not an instant fix. So that decision point has been shifting, I think, for folks. And to some extent, you know, maybe you wait it out. We're seeing return to office policies. Maybe we will need some of them. There are so many question marks, but you're right. I think it's much more structural than oil prices go up, oil prices go down. The pandemic, I hope, only happens once.
Yes, seriously. But, you know, there was leading up to the pandemic, there was such a need for office. There was actually like office space hoarding going on. There were multiple companies in one office space. And then, you know, after the pandemic, these big businesses realized that you could let people work from the comfort of their homes and not lose as much productivity, and office spaces became vacant right after everybody was offering like cool hip work environments with like rec rooms and kegs and cool cafes. So those are the buildings that are also sitting empty alongside the dinosaurs, the big towers, the big office towers, who are also vacant. And it's kind of like, if there even is some sort of a return to office happening, it would most likely be those newer buildings that get rented out before these older ones. So what happens to these towers? You know, how do these people continue to you know, not be delinquent? I mean, paying just your interest rate on a mortgage like that is
that's tough.
Is tough.
That's really tough. So
if you're not getting rent too, you know?
Exactly. Eventually, you know, I have to think, however expensive the retrofit is, maybe at some point it makes sense to do. It might not be instant, right? And someone will probably take a loss on it. But I think even here in Manchester, we have a lot of, there's a bank, for example, that now is apartments. And so they are making these choices at some point in some facilities. Depends on the building and the age and the, you know, whatever infrastructure you have. But that is the direction I see this going. I think it's, again, a little early in the cycle, but as we said in the last segment, we have very low vacancies in things like apartments and condos, though there seems to be more demand there for housing.
I certainly think so. In fact, we got stuck in traffic on the way to the Boston Logan Airport right outside this deserted looking mall.
Oh.
And, there was maybe a couple stores still in there, but you could see the remnants of like the Best Buy sign, the Sears sign. And my partner and I were talking, and I hesitate to even share his idea because I just think it's such a duh thing. And I can't believe nobody's doing it. He's like, why is somebody not buying up these malls and turning them into like dormitory style living for low income or to kind of reduce the homeless population? And it's like going back to your college days where there's common spaces and then you get people to work in the kitchen. So it's like a community environment. And I was like, I love this idea for our shopping malls that are just kind of dying before our eyes. It's better than looking at these eyesores of buildings.
Unfortunately.
It'll be interesting to watch kind of what happens with some of these office buildings and older towers like they kept referencing. But that's all the articles that we brought to the table today. We've covered quite the ground.
Yes,
today.
It's been a whirlwind of a week, so I'm glad we could get some hard numbers out there.
I know. It's always fun to focus on stuff like this, though, when everything else seems to be spinning around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks always for your time and your expertise. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And we appreciate you. Thank you for hanging in there with us as we take you through the numbers. Until next time, bye, Lauren.
Bye, Lindsay.